Hey guys, I am here to talk about Watts and Suicide Watch, and I want to thank my subscriber Karen for letting me know this info. She did let me know last night, and unfortunately I didn't see it till this morning. But killer dad Chris Watts is on Suicide Watch and being checked on every 15 minutes after claiming that fellow inmates are screaming at him to take his own life for murdering his pregnant wife and two daughters. Um, this is the thing that's confusing. Let me finish this and then I'll say. A source at Wisconsin Department of Corrections said Watts is on clinical observation. Watts, 33, told FBI agents last month that fellow inmates yell at him at night and explained to him all the ways he could kill himself in his cell. This is the second time that Watts has been placed on suicide watch after prison officials feared he might take his own life. Watts, who was sentenced to life in prison in November, was transferred to Wisconsin last year from Colorado following security threats. The father pleaded guilty to killing wife Shanann and daughter Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3, and their baby boy Nico. This is what's confusing. He says FBI agents last month Watts told FBI agents last month that fellow inmates yell at him at night. I thought when he was talking about that, he was talking about Colorado, and that's why he got moved. The way in the interview made it sound that things were a-okay where he was now. So I don't know if something changed after he did an interview. Maybe inmates thought he was getting special treatment or treated differently, and so now that's why they're lashing out. Or if he didn't tell the whole truth, which would not be shocking, that people are still treating him horrible and saying horrible, horrible things to him. Not saying that he probably doesn't deserve to hear those things, but I myself would never wish death upon anyone. So, love it or hate it, that's just how I feel. Let's go down a little bit further here. This takes forever. Okay, here it is. Chris Watts is reportedly back on suicide watch in prison following his shocking jailhouse confession about killing his wife, two daughters, and unborn son. A source of Wisconsin Department of Corrections told Radar that Watts is on clinical observation, which is also known as suicide watch. The source said that guards must check on Watts every 15 minutes and that the checks are all recorded. Watts, 33, told FBI agents last month that other inmates at the prison had been screaming at him to commit suicide. Again, I feel like I'm repeating this, but I thought he had stated that happened in Colorado, but not in Wisconsin. And they'd stated reasons why. But let's move on. It says all the inmates would yell at him at night and would explain to him all the ways he could kill himself in his cell, said one official who interviewed Watts. Okay, this is the second time the Watts has been placed on suicide watch after prison officials feared he might take his own life. Watts, who was sentenced to life in prison in November, was transferred to Wisconsin last year from Colorado following security threats. News of the suicide watch comes just days after Watts' shocking jailhouse confession was obtained by Daily Mail. The killer father told investigators last month that he strangled his pregnant wife, Shanann, when she confronted him about his affair with Mistress Nicole Kessinger. He also revealed that he had sex with his wife just hours before murdering her after she returned home from a work trip in Arizona. Watts now regrets his actions and at one point comments on how things could have been, stating, "Right now I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and more likely a 1-month-old son." I don't know what that means. That's kind of a weird. And more than likely. And a beautiful wife, and right now it's just me. Surveillance video captured by his neighbor actually shows Watts appearing to walk one of his young daughters to the car that morning just before he ended her life. I've again watched that footage over and over and over. I do see a shadow, but could I ask, I never see a little girl. Could I ask that maybe Nicole and Chris knew that those cameras were there? So if the girls were murdered in the home, and Nicole was trying to not be on the footage, she could have bent down and was, pulling Bella or Cece or carrying them, and then Chris picked them up, and then she went back. I just don't see the little girl walking. I don't know. It's, I guess, all left for interpretation at this point, unless we ever get the real story. I just thought those girls are killed at home. It's possible that they weren't. The story just doesn't make sense on them being killed at the oil rigs, but time shall tell on that, right? So it will not be surprising to me if Chris Watts does not end up taking his life. If he doesn't, I have a feeling that someone will murder him in prison. I don't see him living out a long life in prison. I just don't. I also just think it's a matter of time for Nicole Kessinger. The clock's ticking. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Because I think they are onto her, and it's closer than they've ever been. I also think it's possible that there could have been Jim involved, maybe, or somebody that we haven't heard of yet, but Kessinger was involved, and her days are numbered. Something that would be interesting to know about this is he's on suicide watch after these prisoners have said this to him. Has he attempted it and failed? Or is it just because inmates are stating this to him? Has he mentioned, I want to do this? So I would assume he's mentioned he wants to do this, or he's tried and failed, and that's why he's on it. No, I don't think that they're just watching him because people are shouting to him to kill himself. I think he's tried, or he has disclosed this information to maybe a preacher or a guard. I don't know. I'm assuming that. I don't know much about prison, so if any of you guys out there are listening that are watching this and you know about prison, maybe you'd have a little bit more insight on it. I'm going to look it up a little bit to see if I can get any insight on exactly what suicide watch would entail. Did he have to try to attempt to kill himself? Or does it just have to be him speaking of it, and then that's what puts them on the watch? Because someone else just saying it to him, I don't think puts him at risk to be on suicide watch every 15 minutes. Make sense? Okay, wow. I started to read some of this, and it's quite interesting, guys. Various forms of suicide watch exist. These generally involve the subject being under continuous or very frequent watch of a guard, such as a prison officer, security officer, or orderly, who will intervene if the subjects attempt to harm themselves. Periodic suicide watch, or more simply known as suicide watch, involves the subject being monitored through frequent periodic checks, which Chris is doing. Intense suicide watch or observation involves the subject being observed continually by a person who may be employed in one of several possibility capacities, sitting or standing in direct sight and arm's reach of the subject. This may be known as one-to-one. Conditions. People under suicide watch are put into an environment where it could be difficult for them to hurt themselves. In many cases, any dangerous items will be removed from the area, such as sharp objects and some furniture, or they may be placed in special padded cells, which has nothing outcropping from the walls, except, like, in parentheses, clothes, hooks, or a door closing brackets to provide a place for a ligature to be attached, and with only a drain grill on the floor. They may be stripped of anything with which they may hurt themselves, or use a noose, including shoelaces, belts, neckties, bras, shoes, socks, suspenders, and bed sheets. In extreme cases, the inmate may be undressed entirely. In even more extreme cases, inmates may be placed in therapeutic restraints, a 4 or 5 pointed restraint system. The inmate is placed on their back on a mattress. Their arms and legs are tied down, and a belt is placed across the chest. In a 5-point system, the head is also restrained. An inmate is allowed a range of movement every 2 hours. When limb is released and they're allowed to move it for a short period, they are then restrained again, proceeding to the next limb. The process is repeated until all restrained have been removed. This process usually continues in 8-hour shifts, and the inmate has to face-to-face encounter with a mental health professional at least once in each 8-hour interval. This cannot continue for more than 16 consecutive hours. The inmate is continually watched by staff during this time. In the most extreme cases of self-harm, only when all other avenues have not worked or impracticable, chemical restraint, drugs, may be used to sedate the inmate. In order for a facility to administer a chemical restraint, it must have the approval recommendation of a licensed mental health professional, the facility warden, and a court order. Suicide watch regimes, this is controversy. Sorry. Suicide watch regimes, particularly in jail cells, have been criticized for being too restrictive and dismissive of privacy. Inmates are often placed naked in suicide cells, which are usually bare concrete, often without bedding, to prevent hanging by using bed sheets, and under frequent or continuous observation by guards. Unsanitary conditions are also common, since toilet paper, underwear, and tampons, obviously Chris doesn't use tampons, but all potential means of choking are restricted. Being exposed without any way of covering oneself, coupled with being under constant observation, can aggravate mental distress. Yes, I can imagine, particularly if the inmate has been a victim of sexual abuse. No. These harsh conditions came to light in 1998 when Elizabeth B., an inmate, Massachusetts, called a radio talk show to describe how she had been treated while on suicide watch. Let's see. Put on eyeball status. Stripped of belongings. I was put on eyeball status. Stripped of belongings, clothing, placed naked in a room with nothing but a plastic mattress on the floor. Watched 24 hours a day by a man or a woman. I was on my period. Okay, we don't need to go there because Chris is not, so let's not have to think about that. The door, when I did that, I was in violation because they couldn't see me. Sorry, I'm flipping around here. My depression intensified. I didn't want to be violated any more than I already was. I put the mattress up against the window. When I did that, I was in violation because they couldn't see me. The door was forced open. I was physically restrained in 4 points. Like they said, being on suicide watch does not guarantee a person will not kill oneself. Ashley Smith, a female inmate at a facility in Canada, killed herself while under suicide watch in October 2007. The circumstances surrounding her death were subject of the Ashley Smith inquest. Interesting. So if unsanitary conditions, I can only imagine that Chris would probably have a really hard time with that. He's very OCD. You saw their house, even though he said it was his mother-in-law. Well, the mother-in-law had moved and the house was still immaculate. I think him and Shanann both were OCD. I am too, with keeping my house clean. There cannot be a dish on my sink, things like that. So that would probably really bother him, as it would me. But I did not realize that they would be naked and lose. I mean, it makes sense now reading it, right? But wow, that really puts it in perspective. I mean, he had to have possibly tried to. And like it says here, just because he goes through this doesn't mean it won't happen. So, again, it could end up happening. Or someone could end up taking his life. No, I do not feel sorry for him one bit. He needs to struggle every day. Every day he needs to struggle. He needs to come clean so he can be set free from all of that. The lies are still harboring on his heart, and he's not ever going to be able to process all this without telling the whole truth. So anyways, guys, that is the info I have on Watts and the suicide watch. So there's some details for you as well. All right. Talk to you guys later. Peace.